Our next speaker is Corinne Latham, who's principal at Seaview Primary School in Belfast and a speaker and author. She also runs the hugely popular Curriculum NI Twitter account. Corinne is going to talk about what teachers can learn from lockdown. Corinne, I'll hand it over to you then.
Hi, hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Tonight you may be wondering what on earth I have chosen a title about chasing planes, but for some of us who have been at the chalk face, chasing planes has been something that I can tell you I've been doing quite a bit of. So if you are needing a bit of a brain break, can I suggest that you all grab a plain piece of paper and all will be revealed in the next slide. You see, whenever I was much younger, I was living with my parents out in Ballynahinch and I had never been on an aeroplane, and I used to look up into the sky and marvel at these mechanical giants flying through the clouds, and I just wished that my parents would take me on an aeroplane, and I was so excited when that day came. And probably after that I was very fascinated with the whole idea of being an engineer. So it was quite interesting to hear the previous speaker because of all the great engineering and creativity. You see, one of the things that I love to do was use a piece of paper to make a paper plane. And isn't it just like a page that we were given as school leaders, teachers? We were all told just on that week beginning the 16th of March that schools would be closing and that we had to develop our own type of paper plane. You see, whenever you think about paper planes, you know, we all manage a paper plane very differently. Now in Seaview, we've been very blessed with a fantastic teaching staff who have all worked really hard with me over a period of time to be very good at the old educational technology. And if we use that analogy, our paper plane was fairly well developed. It wasn't just a fold or maybe the next step. It was maybe more like the Rolls Royce of paper planes. And we had shot that plane off in terms of remote learning before, and we knew that the plane could fly far. And during that week, we actually had a test where we actually said to the children, no, stay at home and we're going to teach you at home. But I know that not everybody had that paper plane. And that's really because in Northern Ireland, our system has been full of school development with so many different things. We were embedding curriculum back from 2007, and we were trying our best to always be leading at something. And you can't be outstanding at everything. My background is in computer-based learning, and I suppose I did have a very well-developed plane. But one of the things I would tell you, and I'm sure that all my colleagues felt exactly the same, that to try to get this aeroplane off the ground, there were a few things that were missing. We really didn't have a flight plan. We didn't know how long we were going to be in this situation, and we knew we needed to get out of the hangar really, really quickly. Ultimately, passenger and crew safety was paramount, and we had to make sure that we were going to avoid any turbulence. And I suppose with COVID, we didn't really know what we were doing. And even though my plane was very highly developed, I was really just hoping that I would get up off the ground. I was propelling my staff forward, my school community forward, in the hope that we would be able to take off smoothly. Now, taking off, if any of you are into aeroplanes, and I have a very good friend who loves taking pictures of aeroplanes, or timelines full of them at times. But one of the things you know is that when everything seems to be going against you, the one thing about an airplane that always makes me marvel is that they go against the wind. And that concept of going against the wind is something that we all had to do. If you were a nursery school teacher, my goodness, what have you achieved getting your children learning remotely? I have to say, in my school, one of the things that we all did enjoy about being up in the sky, in a sense, with COVID was the in-flight entertainment and the snacks. And I think we've all came back looking slightly different because of it. Those of you who know me will know that I am always in search of the perfect plane. I am always in search of the new thing, the new app, the new bit of information that is going to make my school better. But one thing I would tell you is that there's no such thing as a perfect paper plane. No matter how you fold it or how you redo it, there will always be things that you can learn. And as a teacher, my core love is learning, and I constantly wanted to refine how we are actually able to do things. There's a fantastic film that you can watch with your children. It's called Paper Planes, and honestly it's just lovely, and it's this lovely lesson of a teacher just taking a plain page and saying to a class, right, we're going to make paper planes and we're going to see which one can fly the farthest or the furthest. And in Australia there was a big competition, and I'm not going to spoil it all, but this little boy's plane flew so far and the children chased after it. And isn't it so that in Northern Ireland, when these planes went up into the sky, we as educators started chasing paper planes? You see, we started to study everything that was flying around us. Schools were using social media, Twitter, and let's be honest, and I did hear Louise Kerr use this phrase last night, everybody was magpieing. We wanted to see what the school down the road was doing because we wanted to make sure that our plane was well developed and refined. And we were looking and trying to find out, and those ground up collaborations that came through, we had Learn NI, Blended Ed, and now NI Collaborate, and people from the ground up sharing what they knew to help other schools bring the best part of school improvement to their children was unbelievable. And honestly, that is something that we should all be so proud of. I suppose in terms of lessons from lockdown, my biggest one was really collaboration, and that sense of developing core skills amongst so many to enable the whole country to move quite quickly into this phase of online learning. I suppose from a pastoral sense, and there was really good discussion last night about pastoral and well-being, pupil background. I think most teachers realised very quickly that even though some of us have been doing this job for a long time, that really your home life really depended on who you went home from the hospital with. And the type of lives that your children had really depended on who they were living with. And for some of those children, lockdown was not a good experience. And for some of those children, they didn't have food in the cupboards, never mind the Wi-Fi or access to technology. So we did have to meet basic needs, and we did have to think about how we bridge those gaps. Attendance at home was not attendance in school. We had children logging on at 3 in the morning in a primary school, submitting work in Google Classroom. And I suppose our whole thought process about, getting up in the morning initially and maybe turning the computer on at 9 o'clock, and the thought that teachers would be able to deliver some type of remote learning until 3 was just ridiculous. And we had to start to refine our paper planes. And we had to start to understand more about what this term remote learning really meant. For some schools, it meant sending out lots of paper, and for other schools, it meant making lots of videos. Some schools went down the Microsoft route, some schools went down Google Classroom. Some schools use Class Dojo, some schools use Seesaw, and there was a whole plethora of things going out. All the planes looked different. But by studying everything that was flying, I think lots of schools actually took their educational technology experience from naught to about 1,000. And I am absolutely overwhelmed by what we have achieved. But the key thing in any lesson that I have learned from lockdown is the most important thing that a school does is build relationships. Those little human beings are the most important thing in terms of the growth of Northern Ireland. What we can do as a society to make their lives easier in the future can only be done through good relationships. And I have to say, most of my time, and if you live near me, you will know this, was spent pacing around my garden having conversations with families from my school, checking in and making sure that people were keeping well. Because bottom line, no child can learn unless their basic needs are being met. And building those relationships has just been so crucial. I know many of you, and I've seen your videos, and I saw a lovely example this week from Nicola O'Connor. You know, we've been making these videos and we've become YouTube stars. And I was certainly doing online Facebook assemblies, and in the community, people were recognizing me as the principal of the school, reaching out and making sure that people's basic needs were being met through basic connections. The direction of travel that we've came on has actually been vast. And I suppose for a long time in our schools, we were all sitting in our little planes on an island. But now we're all together in the hangar. And now that we're back in school and we've gone through restart, we're parked, we're getting refueled, we're loading up. I know some of you have had to launch your planes again because of self-isolation, and you've had school closures and you've had to flip the learning back to online. But we have been uploading our staff with a lot of knowledge. The one thing I suppose that still concerns me as a school leader, and it's hard, is that there's still really no flight plan, because we don't know how this is all going to pan out or what it's going to look like. I certainly haven't done my job in a pandemic before, and I'm sure you haven't done yours in a pandemic. But one thing I can promise you is that we are ready for a takeoff, because as a lovely example that Nicola did say, is where she was as the teacher in March to where she is now as a teacher is just the vast amount of experience that she has gained. And I am sure that many of you sitting at home feel exactly the same, because you have grown so much in your professional knowledge. There is no doubt that some of the gaps, some of the turbulence that was caused was because we didn't have good professional training in some of this. But we are getting better and we are getting ready if this happens again. You know, in every crisis lies the seeds of opportunity. And we have a decision to make. We can focus on the fact that this awful disease is going to be around and think, oh, this is so bad and it's my school and I'm going to have to close it. Or we can start to focus on the seeds of opportunity. And with that in mind, and part of the brief that I was given was to think a little bit about strategy and vision. And if you're a policymaker and you're maybe watching this, listen up. If you're a school leader, you know, do a few thumbs up online, because we need to think ahead. I never think about today. I always think about tomorrow, because if I thought about today, I probably wouldn't get to tomorrow. There's so much to do and we get so focused in the here and now. But one of the things we all need to do is focus on our digital health. If you are a member of my family, you will know that I was actually getting really bad headaches from being online too much. I was getting Zoom lurgy. And I suppose I also missed that sense of connection. You know, I'd lost my sense of routine. I'd lost some of my friends. I'd lost, you know, seeing my family. And we needed to be very careful with how we were looking after ourselves online and making sure that some of the experiences weren't so focused on a computer, that we really did get outside and look after ourselves. And I suppose as going forward, if we are going into a hybrid or a remote or a blended model, we do need to think about the health and well-being of not just our children, but our teaching workforce, because ultimately teachers are our best resource. And at the minute, I see a lot of stress in the system. I see a lot of people not managing, and we need to look after each other. Cyber resilience, I do think that we all need to be careful online with the applications that we're sharing with children, and more advice and stringent guidelines. It was great to see towards the end of June some advice coming out from ATI about safeguarding and looking after the pastoral needs of children online. It is very different, as I've said, attendance at home versus attendance in school. And how do we know when a young person isn't feeling great? We use lots of Microsoft Forms and did lots of check-ins with parents. You heard me talk about phone calls that I was making. But making sure that we are building up a society that has cyber resilience. And I even know my mum and dad, who are both quite elderly, have cyber resilience because they're always aware of scams. And I think we do need to look at that whole area of cyber security. And there's great stuff online now that we can teach our children more about cyber resilience. And Carla Lockhart yesterday in Westminster actually talked about the Thrive Academy, a Northern Ireland program where, you know, children are being taught about their digital wisdom, their social presence, and understanding how to present themselves as digital natives. So we do need to encourage digital health, cyber resilience, digital wisdom. And the biggest challenge, I think, in all of this, and it's something that is very dear to my heart, is our digital ecosystem. The Department of Education did take on board some of my ideas, and I am proud that they have looked at BT open zones to see if we can expand those and make them richer for children to access the internet freely. But we mustn't forget that there are plenty of teachers who don't have the right technology at home to fully equip them to teach better. And if teachers are our best resource, we need to equally resource them. So whether you're a nursery teacher or whether you're teaching an FE, you need to have the right tools to be able to deliver the content. And I think we need to be very careful that we are not overburdening the workforce with too much. I find it really hard as an educator to switch off, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. But it was interesting last night talking, listening to the chat going on last night from Emma Kell. You know, we need to think about ourselves, and we need to realize that we're not irreplaceable. And if I was sick tomorrow, somebody would be in my shoes. So we do need to be aware of what we can do, but as policy going forward, you know, we need to find ways that we can strengthen our communities, whether we're in school or we're at home. We need to look at the core skills that we're giving children to be wise online, to be resilient, to be aware of their own well-being. And most of all, the biggest thing for me is that we always have to put children at the center of all our decisions. No matter what we do, and this is me coming into land, and some of you may think that I'm actually bringing in a flight with my headset on, but as I'm coming into land, one of the biggest things that I want to tell you all is that, going back to the first slide, you have a page, and it's really up to you what mark you leave on that page. Now, I am Curriculum NI, but I have been Miss Hannah, Mrs. Latham, and I like to think that I have made a very positive mark on my children. Post-COVID, I think we all need to remember this mantra. We need to love our children first and teach them second. We need to love them first and teach them second. We need to be more about Maslow and meet their basic needs before we can be about Bloom's. And if we can do that, we will build a very resilient young person that is equipped for all the things that the Northern Ireland curriculum want. A contributor to society, a contributor to the environment, a contributor to the economy. We need to bear in mind that our young people deserve so much more, and we need to have a flight plan. And if you're up in Stormont and you're listening to this, think about the young people and what they can truly gain during this time of opportunity as opposed to crisis. So that brings me safely back into land and Bravo Tango 38. So hopefully you've got something from that. If any of you want to connect with me, I'm online, I'm Curriculum NI. I also can be found in Seaview Primary School. But the biggest thing for me this year has really been collaborating with school leaders. And I just want to take a minute just to pay absolute tribute to everything that they have done to create their paper plane and to fly it. And all I can simply do is chase after them. They're absolutely amazing people to work alongside. And I would like to thank BBC for this lovely opportunity to speak with you all. Thank you.
Corinne, thank you very much. It was fantastic.